Play Projects.
So now we're going to assemble the neck yoke for the garment. We have our front neck yoke piece here, and we've got two back neck yokes. Just like with our front and back pieces of the body of the shirt, we finished the raw edges of the pieces with a zigzag stitch, the straight raw edges. So here, these are my two shoulder seams for the front, and these are the two shoulder seams for the back, and also along the center back, which is this straight flat edge here. Now to assemble all of these together, we're going to match up the shoulder seams of the back with the shoulder seams of the front, putting the right sides of our fabrics together. So those two are going to come together here. I'm going to pin that in place. And this shoulder will line up with this shoulder here. I'm going to bring these to the machine, and I'm going to sew those seams together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along the shoulder edges. So here we have the front and the back neck yoke pieces attached. I sewed them with a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the shoulder seams, and I pressed those seam allowances open. So we've got it nice and flat. The next thing that we're going to do is sew a zigzag edge all the way around the outer curve of this yoke piece. And then once we've got that, we'll attach it to the body of the shirt. So now I've got my neck yoke piece with the zigzag stitch all the way around the curve of the outer edge, and I'm ready to attach this to the body of my shirt. So I've got my shirt here, or my garment, whatever, if you're working with the shirt or the dress. I have it here, and I have it with the right side of the fabric facing out. And as we've done with most of our seams here, we're going to put our right sides of our fabrics together. And first, I'm going to line up my shoulder seams. I've got the shoulder seam of the body of the garment and the shoulder seam of the yoke. I'm going to put those together, and I'm going to line up that inner raw edge of the neckline. So I'll put a pin here. I'm going to put a pin on this side too. And then pin this in place along the front neck edge. And on the back, pin it along the neck edge, and you'll see there's quite a bit of overlap here. That overlap, we're going to fold the yoke piece in so that the fold of the yoke is flush with the fold at that neck opening. And I'll pin that in place. And I'll do the same on the other side. So now I've sewn my neck yoke to the body of the garment. I've sewn it all the way along the neck edge, and I've trimmed my seam allowance. So I sewed that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I've trimmed it down to about 1/8 of an inch. This is going to make it easier for all of the fabric to fit in when we fold it around the neck edge for that nice finished look. So now that it's sewn and trimmed, I'm going to fold it around to the wrong side of the fabric. And we'll go all the way around and fold it in. So now I've pressed the yoke, the neck yoke towards the wrong side of the garment. You've got a nice clean edge right along the seam line here all the way around the neck. And we're ready to, almost ready to sew that down into place. But before we do that, we're going to stick our bias button loop inside the fold first. This is going to make it so that the raw edge of this button loop is hidden inside the yoke. So I'm going to fold up the yoke on the right side. When you've got the wrong side of the back facing up, you can pull up the yoke on the right hand side at the neck edge. And I'm going to take my bias loop, my bias button loop, and stick it right in there. And stick it kind of right above that seam line. I'm going to pin it in place, and I'm going to sew it just to the yoke side of the garment. So now I've got my button loop pinned, sewn into place. And you can see I just did my seam allowance just on the yoke piece. And so the front, on the right side of the fabric and the right side of the garment, when this is folded over, you're not going to see that seam line at all. You'll just see that nice clean button loop hanging out the edge of the fabric there. So now we're ready to sew the yoke in place. You're going to sew this curved line about 1/4 of an inch from this zigzagged edge all the way around the neck edge. Sewing this kind of seam with this fabric overlapping like this can be a little bit tricky. So you want to put in a lot of pins to hold your fabric in place and also take it slow with your machine. So now I've sewn the yoke, the neck yoke, to the body of the garment, right along the side here, along the neck edge. Here it has both sides of the back. I show it to you in the front here. Sewn down flat, and I'm also going to show you how it looks on the right side of the garment with the right side of the garment facing out. So we get a nice clean line here in the front and in the back. And next we're going to attach the sleeves, or if you're making this as a tank top, we'll show you how to attach the armhole facings.